I'm taking the team total. I'm taking first quarter, first half, full game, taking it all. OU all the way. I lost so much money on OU.
Whoa, he has trouble with the spin, and the ball is free. Can't start from all crazy.
And they run through our ass like shit through a tin horn, man.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
What is up, and welcome to Not Another CFB Pod. This is the Week 10 CFB review, Week 9 NFL review. Pumped to be on the show. We had a bunch of insane upsets go down. Most importantly, though, we had a Lions win. We had a Michigan State Spartans win. How we doing, Coda Capper Beast?
We're doing good as far as my teams go. You know,
Absolutely.
betting wise, it was not a great weekend. Have to say it was a pretty low point as far as the bets went. I think it was my worst week, by far so far.
Yeah.
So, we're looking to kind of get back on track here, but it is what it is.
That's the reason I let off with the Michigan State and Lions thing, just to kind of get you in a good mood, even though, because my bets weren't great either. I think I was down both days, but not by a lot. Like, it wasn't drastically bad. It just, we've won every weekend pretty much. So like to just lose barely or lose by a lot, it still feels so strange because we've just done so well. So we do have to pat ourselves on the back just a little bit, man. I think we've been kind of killing it this year.
Oh, we definitely have. But, before we go too far, I have to make a statement here, PG. I think I'm going to speak for both of us on this one, but we have to make a formal statement here, to all of our followers, our CFB Pod Nation. All right, we're going to start this one off, guys. I just want to say one thing to the fans and everybody in Not Another CFB Pod Nation. I'm sorry, extremely sorry. We were hoping for an undefeated season betting. That was my goal. It's something the boys have never done here. But I promise you one thing, a lot of good things will come out of this. You have never seen any better in the entire country bet as hard as I will win the rest of the season. You'll never see someone push the rest of the team as hard as I will push the pod the rest of the season. You'll never see a pod win harder than we will the rest of the season. God bless.
Tebow. Shout out Tebow.
Yeah, shout out Tebow. If nobody caught that one, it was
Electric.
Tim Tebow. I was like mixing in words there, trying to, kind of make it work for the pod. So shout out Tim Tebow. We had to make a formal statement, boys. Rest of the season is going to be good. CFB Pod Nation, keep riding with us, man.
That's right. Right on. We're doing a lot of research. We're gathering data points right now. I think Beast put it well with his speech there. I'm glad he came in with that. I wasn't expecting that. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I was kind of like, what's going to happen here? He told me there was something big for the show. So I'm hoping that was the only big thing that catches me off guard, but I loved it. I loved every second of it. No doubt. Okay. So I did mention we had some crazy upsets. So I guess we need to probably start with college football right now. We've got a big show. We're going to review college football. We're going to review NFL. We're going to talk some early MACtion games this week. We've got 6 of them, so we've got a couple plays on that as well. Before we get into the CFB review part of the show, I want to read a quick ad from our sponsor. The Dakota Sportsbook is a South Dakota-owned and operated sportsbook located in the Midnight Star Casino in Deadwood, South Dakota, serving customers in the state. As you enter the Midnight Star, you are swept into the past with the grand staircase, stunning woodwork, and the elegance of the chandelier. They offer the best lines in Deadwood, so stop by, mention the Coda Sports Gambling Network to receive a free Bet Coda's t-shirt. Play responsibly. Must be 21 years or older to wager. Gambling problems or concerns? Call 1-800-522-4700. We got to talk, Beast, because that was an electric weekend of college football. We had big upsets. We had barn burners. We had surprising results. One team probably looked the best this weekend, and that's probably where we should start. But there's kind of 2 big games we really got to start with. Number one, I think we got to talk about the quote-unquote game of the century. Number 1 team in the CFP poll versus the number 1 team in the AP poll. Tennessee at Georgia. The Bulldogs taking home 27-13. They looked awesome. The game wasn't really close. I know that final score is a 14-point spread. It really didn't really feel like that. Now, the fourth quarter, when Georgia was up and they kind of were messing around with their food a little bit, but a great win. Georgia showed me everything I need to see. They're going to be the subject of my one big take towards the end of the show. So I'm going to let Beast talk about this game a little bit.
You put it spot on there, man. It was 24-6 at halftime. So they just came out and they absolutely dominated this game. The yardage totals, when I'm looking at it, 387 to 289. That doesn't even speak to like how much, Georgia's defense obviously showed that in the, the box score with, under 300 yards. You give up that to a Tennessee offense that we've said is like top 3 in the country this year in every stat probably. So it was a really impressive win. It showed me that as long as Georgia can find a way to put up points, like their defense, nobody can touch them right now. So I'm with you. They're my number one. I feel like they should have probably been number one entering last week, and they showed why. So that was an impressive win. I think they made a statement for sure.
We do need to say that we need to remember the AP poll, the coaches poll. People thought Georgia was the best team. The CFP is the ones that came in and told us that no, Tennessee's actually the first team. And we did say on the pod that we thought that there were definitely, argument points to be made for Tennessee being number one, but obviously Georgia showed why they're number one. I'm not even a big Stetson Bennett guy. He looked good. I mean, the defense is just nasty as it's ever been, and they're just picking it up as they go, getting better and better and better. We do need to talk about the next game, though, so this was an insane result as well. We had the LSU Tigers upsetting the Alabama Crimson Tide in Death Valley at night, 32-31. This comes off the back of a great decision by Coach Kelly, Brian Kelly, that is, to go for it, go for 2 in overtime, to go for the win at home. It pays off. The Tigers win big. I think he just knew he had that play in his back pocket, and that's why they went for 2. I just wanted to highlight him a little bit because I'm like a known Brian Kelly hater, and I still don't like him, but this was a great win for him, and it really does look like LSU's headed in the right direction. They're going to be the highest ranked loss team right now. Alabama falls to 7-2 as well. A weird year for them. What were your thoughts on this game?
It's a very weird year for them. I would say that it's kind of unfortunate that LSU started the season off so rocky with their 2 losses, because right now they're playing just as good as anybody else in the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if we're looking at a team like Oregon or like we're looking at a team like UCLA, like I think LSU would beat some of these teams. Maybe TCU. Like if you put TCU and LSU on a neutral site right now, I feel like I would take LSU, but that's what's unfortunate is like, no matter what LSU does, like they're probably not going to be able to get into the CFP, but doesn't mean they can't, make some noise in the SEC. Like
they are now the 1 seed and they control their own destiny in the SEC West. And it should be noted that a team has never made the playoff as a 2-loss team. But I'm here to tell you right now, if LSU upsets Georgia, both teams went out. LSU upsets Georgia in the SEC championship game. I think LSU will be the first 2 seed to go to the CFP. That is a 2-loss team, because they'll just have to, and they may end up being the 4 seed or whatever it ends up being, but they'll just have to go. They're the SEC champs, and we know how much the committee loves the SEC. So.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. If that can happen, like I'm almost rooting for that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. I would have to respect it.
Yeah, like I kind of want some chaos, like you said, I'm not a big Brian Kelly guy either, but it's been impressive at least to see him get these guys turned around. Makes you wonder if like maybe in the future years, if he can recruit well, like can he get these guys kind of playing well? But we'll see. Like there's still a lot of season left. Like that would be a lot of chaos that would have to happen for them to, win out and then beat Georgia. We love Georgia right now, and like I don't know if anybody can beat them, but that was an impressive win. It also makes me just feel like we kept saying like maybe Alabama's not that good, and then I entered last week and maybe I just bought in too much on them because I had a minus 13.5, and that was just that never really had a shot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
yeah, it's a weird year for Alabama, no doubt. Like I thought too, like when you said that, I didn't push back at all on your pick because we kept waiting for this Alabama team to like respond. Like a lot of these Alabama teams have in the past when they pick up their first loss, but this team just doesn't have the juice. I think a lot of has been made about their not their quarterback, but their wide receivers. The weapons the wide receiver has is just not up to par. The offensive line is okay, but not great. The defense is okay, but not great. You know what I mean? It's just not. There's talent all over this team. It's just young and inexperienced, and they just don't have the skill guys that we're used to them having right now. So a tough loss for them. Let's go down the slate, and I think we'll start Friday night. Do want to give a shout out to Coastal Carolina though for winning on Thursday night. That was a big contention point on the CFB Central show. Shout out to the Coda Cappers.
Yep.
But let's start on Friday night. We had Oregon State Washington. That was kind of the big game there. We had Oregon State +3, or I did, I should say, and they covered. But they do lose in Seattle, Washington, 24-21. Last second field goal by Washington. You could argue that Washington should have probably scored a touchdown at the end, but we love them for just setting up the field goal to win it, to cover that. I think we had 3.5, or maybe it was 4. I think it was 4.5, but either way, we needed a field goal there, and that's what we got. So shout out to that game. Not a big game necessarily, kind of a fun cold one classic though.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the number 2 team right now, Ohio State at Northwestern. Ohio State wins maybe the ugliest game ever. I want to let you talk about this one. Over Northwestern 21-7. What are your thoughts? Because I know the wind was blowing like 30 miles an hour, but still 21-7.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think about it exactly, like what you just said as far as the win, because Ohio State, we've seen them put up like 55 on other teams. Like, it's not even to say Northwestern was good, just everything seemed to be bad weather-wise, like game script. Like, it just was bad. Like, halftime, that game was 7-7. So it wasn't like this was just a game where Ohio State was putting up a ton of points like they typically do, and then allowing, like, their defense obviously played fine, but, a lot will probably be made out of that result. People will be like, well, wait a minute, like, Michigan's been smoking everybody, and like Ohio State barely beat Northwestern. And it's like, well, you kind of got to look at the weather. You kind of got to look at that game. And you have to realize that like Ohio State could come out next week and just absolutely drop a 60 piece. And then we forget about this game. So
yeah,
it was a win. I mean, they still won by 14. Like, it wasn't that bad of a win. It was ugly offensively, which is something we're not used to. Like,
that was kind of my point. Just a very ugly game, very kind of un-Ohio State-like, but that's the kind of game Northwestern makes you play, especially when you play on a team's home field.
Right.
It's not easy. A team that found out about playing on the road against solid opponent, the Clemson Tigers, absolutely get destroyed by the Fighting Irish, 14-35. This was in South Bend, Indiana. I was impressed with what I saw from Notre Dame. Again, a team that lost 3 games early on. They're immediately ranked in the AP poll now. I don't know what the ceiling is for their season, but this is a team that has a really good defense. But I think the bigger story, Clemson got exposed, man.
Oh, they 100% got exposed. You kept saying, too, like the last probably 2 weeks, you were like, Notre Dame's kind of finally starting to play better.
Yeah.
And like there were a lot of people that were kind of high on them entering the year. And then obviously
they were ranked top 10, I want to say.
Yeah. And like after the Marshall loss, I think like everybody kind of just sold their stock on them, but they kind of didn't give up on the year, and they've really played some good ball down the stretch. And like they're definitely playing ranked, football right now.
Right.
Like, so they deserve to be ranked. It just Clemson, I feel like all year long I kept saying, well, they're kind of getting in these close games. I didn't expect that result to happen.
Yeah.
But you know what? You had to travel to Notre Dame. Like, that's not an easy travel. And sometimes you just come out flat, and they did. It almost seemed like they just weren't ready for that game. So, we give Dabo so much credit sometimes. He didn't have his guys ready. So, like, he deserves a little bit of shit for that one. Like,
yeah, and there's a lot of question marks about his staff, not just him, but he promoted from within. A lot of these guys played at Clemson. And so somebody made a great point on their podcast, which was all these guys have like Clemson experience. They don't come from other programs where it's like, well, we were in this situation, we did this, or like the other team did that. It's all guys that are from within. So like everything's there's just a lot of inexperience right now, and that could be a big part of what's going on. But I think they suffer from something similar to what Alabama is right now, which is they just don't have the receivers. They've obviously got Will Shipley, who's a beast, Clemson does, but I mean, their quarterback's just kind of mid, and then like the receivers just aren't there. I mean, they still got a great shot to win the ACC championship, and they probably will. But I think a lot of people have checked out on Clemson. That may be their only loss for the year until bowl season at least. But I don't see them getting into the playoff.
Yeah,
I guess
DJU didn't play good. Like,
no.
And we've seen a couple games like that out of him this year where they haven't played that good, but Clemson's defense was just good enough to kind of will them to wins. But Yeah, DJ Ukulele, like he's not good.
We go back to the ukulele thing. So let's talk about Ohio State's rival. Michigan beats Rutgers at Rutgers 52-17. This was a really impressive performance for me, and it's why I moved Michigan up to number 2 on my poll. I let them jump Ohio State.
Yep.
Most people have Ohio State in front of Michigan, but I just think Michigan's had more consistent results. I don't – it's going to be hard to line up and beat Michigan. Now, the problem for them is they're the same team as Georgia basically is. And so if, let's say that somehow happens, lots of games left, but if it's Georgia versus Michigan, Georgia's just a better version of Michigan. They could just pound the rock, play defense, which I guess the sicko side of me kind of wants to see that game, but that would kind of be ugly. Michigan obviously still has to play some big games. They've got Ohio State on the schedule. Then they've obviously got the Big 12 or Big 10 championship. So a lot of game left. What I'm seeing from Michigan right now it just looks like a hard team to beat, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, they're dominating everybody. I would make the statement, and it's not my big take of the week or anything, but it probably could be like a secondary take. They might have the best rushing attack in the country. Like when you think about the fact that, like, if Corum was getting all of the, carries, he could probably put up like over 200 yards per game, easily, if I'm being honest. If he was getting 30 carries a game, he'd be putting up 200 yards every game. But they don't need to because they have Edwards there. So like you look at their numbers, both guys averaged over 5.5 yards per carry last week. Get 109 yards out of both of your running backs. Like it's a clear like. What did they say? They didn't say we're lightning and thunder. They said like we're like lightning or something like that. That was their quote that they used after one of their games.
I like that.
And it's really the truth is like they don't have any like animosity towards each other. Like they're just like, hey, whoever wants to take the yards, like we're cool with it. And they probably both know that they're going to be NFL running backs someday. Right. Like it's kind of interesting just because very much like you said, like I think just they're both really, really solid running backs, and like this is probably the best rushing attack in the country. Yeah. But I'm with you. I don't think their defense is as good as Georgia's. That doesn't mean their defense is bad, but I think that if they have to face somebody that like could play their same style of ball, like they might not be able to pull it off.
That's kind of what I'm getting at is I think their offenses are a carbon copy, and then you give the defensive advantage to Georgia, but not by a ton. Michigan's so smart too because they don't have to just feed Blake Corum because, like you said, they've got that other guy. But it keeps both guys fresher this way too. This is modern coaching at its finest. You remember back in our day, Beast, if you will, they would just let that running back carry it 30 times, and they would just break them down. By the time the Bulls got around or whatever it was, championship, the guy didn't look the same. He still might have some decent yardage, but not the same as he was in that midpoint in the season. So I just love that they can keep these guys fresh. Let's keep moving down the list. We got lots of games to get to. Our TCU Horned Frogs keep it up 34-24 over Texas Tech. They stay undefeated. They may jump into that 4 slot. We'll see. This will come out. So the new CFB poll comes out the night you're listening to this, Tuesday night. So stay locked in. I'm sure Beast and I will be on Twitter for that. We always have some reactions. Also, the Oregon Ducks taking care of business against the worst Power 5 team, Colorado, 49-10. Bo Nix doing it. Randomly, he's kind of generating a Heisman. I think he had a passing touchdown, receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown. So pretty cool for him. Yep. USC squeaks one out against Cal, 41-35. Nobody saw it because it was at 9:30, I think, Central. So 10:30 your time, Beast. I mean, the offense looks good. The defense has some major problems. I guess let's go into this. Let's let you talk about Michigan State because they got a ranked win this weekend, 23-15 over Illinois. What'd you think of the Spartans? Where's the season headed? What's your thoughts?
That was a game where at halftime, it's been a long time since I've really said it with Michigan State, but at halftime, I texted a couple of my friends and I said, don't know what's going to happen in the second half, but right now Michigan State just looks like the better team. Like they really did. Yeah. And that was something like their defense had not played that good all year. They only allowed 7 points in the first half. Obviously they only allowed 15 in the whole game. But it was a way different defensive performance. I'm not really sure where that came from or like, did they change up some things on defense? did the suspensions maybe make some guys step up? Because they lost like 4 starters on the defense. So maybe, I don't know if that had anything to do with it. It was weird because it kind of made no sense because Illinois had been kind of actually rolling, most of their schedule. I wouldn't say Illinois played outstanding football for most of their wins, but they were winning games like 23-10. So it was weird because I was like, they're good, but like their schedule really hadn't played like a Michigan or Ohio State.
Right.
And the rest of the Big Ten kind of drops off a lot after that. So like the first thing some of my Michigan friends texted me was they were like, maybe Illinois is just like overrated. And I'm like, you know what? Can't we just like enjoy one thing, But it was a good win for Michigan State. And like, it was unexpected. Like they were 17-point underdogs in that game. So
fantastic win.
I don't know what's going to happen in the Big Ten West, but for any other Big Ten West teams, like, hey, Illinois can go down. Like they're not that good.
Yeah, the blueprint's out there, but I am happy for you guys just because I think one of the things we said, we were talking about all those suspensions last week. One thing that can happen is the team sort of rallies because it's all these young guys playing. These are Mills guys. It's kind of a new blood. It can kind of fuel the team a little. So we'll keep an eye on them because we might get some value with the Spartans going forward.
Right.
Just because people are kind of overlooking them, but that was a great result for them. Got to talk about my team, the Oklahoma Sooners. They lose this weekend. Baylor beats them 38-35. Good performance from Baylor. I did want to say just a few things about OU. Tough loss. The offense played pretty well, but Dylan Gabriel had 3 interceptions. 2 of those were really his fault. One of them was a tipped, they were all 3 tipped, but 2 of them shouldn't have been thrown. The third one was unlucky. Those things happen. OU almost still overcame it, but the defense just couldn't stop the run. I was listening to an OU podcast today, and they were talking about even in the moments where OU put 5 defensive linemen in the game, they still couldn't really get a stop against the run, and Baylor was able to run the clock out. But I liked what I saw from the offense. Defense has work to be done. That's not really news with OU. Tough loss. Definitely want to make sure we get bowl eligible. I think that's really the big goal right now for OU. Not too hard to do that. Should be from going here on forward, but there's a chance. I don't know if you know this, Beast, and we may have to make plans for this, but there's a chance that OU ends up in the Idaho Potato Bowl. And if that happens, dude, I know I've got to go. I'm going to try to get you and whoever else I can get in there. We go to Boise, Idaho. Dude. Can you imagine? We could definitely – they have like a potato mascot and everything. We're definitely going to try that.
I think that would be amazing. I'm almost rooting for it at this point.
I know. I know. We just need to get bowl eligible, and we'll see. I know that the Memphis Bowl, whatever it's called, really wants OU because it's not a terrible drive for OU, and it'll get a lot of people into there. I think it's I forget what that bowl is called. Liberty Bowl, maybe. So who knows? It's going to be a weird year for OU. Let's talk about a couple more ranked matchups we had. I guess the next one we could talk about, Texas beats Kansas State at Kansas State. This is one we talked about in the preview show. They win it. Texas does 34-27. Kansas State just woke up way too late. I don't know how much of this game you saw. Texas got off to a really big lead, but K-State kind of clawed their way back. Looked like they were going to have a chance, but got to give a shout out to Texas because they did close this thing out. And that was the side I liked. I probably should have bet it. Texas minus 2.5. When Vegas tells you something like that, the red flag's got to go up, and you gotta consider betting it. Just couldn't tuck myself into back in the Longhorns. Did you see any of that game?
I did, yeah. 31 points in the first half out of them. They looked awesome, and then you're right. They kind of fell off in the second half, but hey, they did enough to win the game, and that's all that mattered for them. But we were like, man, like this would be a really good side. I kind of regretted not taking it just because my weekend went so bad and betting college anyway. So like it would have been nice to have that winner. But it makes me think a lot about this, upcoming matchup Texas is going to have. Can they take down TCU? Like, we'll see what happens, man.
TCU's had their number in the past, but this is 2 new coaching staffs. So we'll definitely break that one down on the preview show coming out Friday morning. No doubt. Let's talk about your Utah Utes. They win it over Arizona 45-20. Utah's still kind of rolling along. People kind of forgot about them, but they're still there. Here's a result I kind of want to hear from you just because you're the Big Ten guy. Penn State beats Indiana 45-14. Have our opinions changed on Penn State really at all? If they haven't, like we can just kind of skip over it. But, I just want to kind of hear what you think.
No, not too much. It seems like to me it goes, if you're going to rank, the Big Ten, pick your choice out of Ohio State and
Right.
Michigan. I feel like most people have Ohio State over Michigan, but you make a very valid point. Like maybe Michigan's better, but then that third team, I don't know anybody that could like argue that Penn State isn't that third team. And then after Penn State, like I think there's a significant drop off. But Penn State right now, I'm looking at them, and Michigan State's gonna have them in a couple weeks. I'm worried about them. I don't think they're gonna lose the rest of their Big Ten schedule. They just look really good. The only other two teams in the Big Ten that I could think could beat them is exactly who did beat them, which is Michigan and Ohio State. So
Right.
it feels like exactly that is there's a big gap between your 1 and 2 to 3, and then a big gap between 3 down because Penn
Yeah.
State looks great. They're just not top of the Big Ten. So
Got to give a shout out to him. My guy, Ben, he's a Penn State student, talked about him last time. But the one thing about them is Penn State just beats the teams they're supposed to beat.
right.
Pretty consistent in that way, but got to give a shout out. Our guy, Drake May, gets it done barely against Virginia. North Carolina beats Virginia at Virginia 31-28. But North Carolina, just a one-loss team, keeps rolling on. They're not really getting much respect because I think the ACC is pretty darn weak. Probably definitely my weakest Power 5 right now. Conference, that is. ACC just kind of, especially now with Clemson going down. Boy, that's a rough patch there. But North Carolina making some noise. We'll see. I did want to get this one out there because it makes me feel a little bit better about OU losing. Oklahoma State goes down to Kansas 37-16, and it wasn't that close. Oklahoma State scored in the fourth quarter to make that look a little closer. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to harp too much on OSU because, like I said, I don't really hate them. It's not really like that, but I had Oklahoma State minus 2.5 or whatever it ended up being. I think we ended up saying money line because it was much better value. They never had a chance. And that, that happens, but Kansas, they're bowl eligible, man. I can't believe it.
I remember at one point talking this year about how I thought Oklahoma State had a pretty decent defense. Well, that's just over with.
Not at this point.
Because the truth is, like, I mean, Kansas's offense, they're good, but I don't think they're good enough to be putting up 37 on you. Like, if you're really that good, but they're not. So clearly, like, they kind of got exposed. It's not that much of a disrespect to Oklahoma State because we know Kansas has been good. Just it wasn't close, and I expected them to keep that game close. Everybody did, I feel like, for the most part. But yeah, ugly one, But Big 12 has these weird results sometimes.
Big 12 is a crazy conference right now. I don't know what's going to happen. I think they said if the championship happened today, obviously it's TCU and I think Texas, and there's like a bunch of teams that are tied right there. So lots of craziness to happen, especially if Texas maybe were to upset TCU. I'm kind of rooting for TCU just to kind of win out, just to kind of see what they would do in a playoff. They're obviously going to get blown out, but it's a cool story. It's a cool story. Let's keep moving down. Tulane stays. I think they actually have one loss, but they beat Tulsa 27-13. Syracuse gets smoked by Pittsburgh. Another evidence of the ACC maybe not being that good. Pittsburgh wins it 19-9. Disgusting. Rip Wake Forest, rip the dream. Sam Hartman still playing pretty good football, but Wake going down to NC State 30-21. NC State, I think, has now moved to the third string quarterback, and the offense has started to move a little bit again. It's a different offense, but it is moving. UCF won again, man. UCF beats Memphis 35-28. So American Conference has a couple of ranked teams still.
Yep.
Any other games you want to talk about before we move on to the NFL? I feel like we covered all the ranked games there, but if there's any unranked games.
Let me see. The one game we do have to mention is Air Force and Army.
We should mention that, but there's one other one. I had the under in this one. Air Force wins it 13-7. Beast and I both had bets on this game, and for a minute there, normally when Beast and I are on two different picks, they both hit, like on the same game.
Yeah.
But he had Army money line. Army came up just short.
Yep.
Obviously, a touchdown would have won it for him at any point in time. But a heck of an Armed Forces game. I told you, man, that under was so easy that it was never.
They always are, man. They always are.
If they're going to let me do 40, because I was planning on betting the under at like 35, which is what Army Navy will be like 33 or something.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take the under. I'm just telling you right now, because these games just win. I mean, it's like 85% now on the under. Yeah. But what were your thoughts on that game? Because I know you had Army money line and you were this close like multiple times.
Yeah, it was such an ugly game that like it was great for your under, but I was just like, unless something big changes, like the defenses were just playing so well and those offenses just they know each other because that's what they both play. Like their defenses are so ready for that because that's all they face in practice all week is like that same kind of just option. And it was too easy for the defenses. I wanted to see Army kind of get something going late in the game, and they just never did. But you know what? To lose 13-7 on like an over plus 200 money line, like you said, a late touchdown, a blocked kick, like anything could have happened. So hey, it was a big swing, but it is what it is.
I'm so glad you took a second glance at the board because it caught my eye too. We have to talk about the downfall of Texas A&M.
Yes.
Florida goes into College Station, wins at 41-24 over Texas A&M. What a mess they have there. And I already saw, the blame game going out. Oh, that our guys have the flu, so they can't play. And even if that's true, you can't win an offseason championship and then go 3-6. Where are the freshmen? Put the freshmen in if you're so good. I hate the goalpost moving. I want to let you talk about this. Everyone kind of knows my feelings on Texas A&M, especially Jimbo Fisher. I just think it's hilarious. I watched so much of that game. I ended up putting a live bet in because were you on the Florida Gators last minute or?
I was,
okay.
Yeah.
I ended up putting in a bet. I don't know if I tagged you on action, but I ended up putting a bet like right after kickoff. So it was technically live, but it wasn't really. So I cashed. You could tell right away that Florida was the better team here. I loved every second of this game. Did you have any thoughts on it?
We've already acknowledged that I didn't really do great on college football this weekend, but one play that I really broke down quite a bit and I was spot on with was I just said Texas A&M can't defend the run, and that's exactly what happened in that game. They allowed 291 yards rushing, like three different guys on the team on Florida had 78, 80 yards, 100 yards. Like you had three guys that had pretty much rushed for 80 yards apiece. It was dominance at every front. Anthony Richardson was moving the ball great. He had 11.1 yards per carry. Like he looked great. And then obviously ETN was good. The other running back that they got there, Johnson, had 100 yards. So just dominance on the run game. Obviously Richardson did his thing passing too, but he didn't really have to do that much just because when you can't stop the run, that changes so much about that game. And, there was no surprise they put up 41 because Texas A&M can't stop the run. And their defense is just frauds. Like we thought they were going to be really good for a good portion of the year, and they're just not that good. So that was one game where I was like, all right, pat myself on the shoulder because at least I had the right breakdown on it, like exactly what we expected to happen happened. So
yeah, and I loved it, and I'm glad that I took that because it was I don't want to call it a no sweat, but the second half was definitely a no sweat.
Yeah.
So let's move to the NFL. I think I had a slightly better day in the NFL. It wasn't great. I put together kind of a wacko teaser for the noon slot games. Something I've been doing lately is just like late night Saturday when I'm finishing the last couple games of college football. Maybe you've had a couple and you hop on the sports book and you start looking at okay, what are locks? And I take 3 or 4 locks and kind of put them together in a teaser because that gives you 6 extra points, but didn't work out too great for me this weekend. But it is what it is. Do you have any thoughts on kind of the Sunday slate, or is there somewhere particular you want to start? We could start with the Lions getting a great win over the Packers.
Yeah, we could start with that.
9-15.
Honestly, kind of ironically, both Michigan State and the Lions played pretty ugly football, but won their games.
It's definitely ugly.
And what's weird is both those teams this year we've seen so much issues with defense, and in both those games their defenses were actually pretty darn good. Now, granted, being PG, we both had the over in that Lions and Packers game.
Yeah,
that might have been the most absurd first half of just turnovers. I want to say I counted 4 red zone turnovers in the first half alone.
And I think 3 of those were 4th down and goal from the 1-inch line, didn't convert, or no, 2 of them were that The other two were straight up turnovers, is what I think it was.
Yeah, there was at least 2 interceptions that were, intercepted in the end zone.
Yeah.
One of those they had thrown to an offensive lineman, David Bakhtiari.
Yes.
I'm like,
Aiden
what
Hutchinson.
are we doing?
Yeah.
Like it's fourth down, and that's the play that the Packers drew up against the Lions defense. I'm like, what are you guys like? Sure, it was good to see the Lions win, but honestly, in a certain sense too,
We
the
were
Lions
sick.
are like we don't want to win. We want to get a good draft pick. So like that was not necessarily great for the tank if we're gonna be talking about that. But no, but I mean like good win for the Lions. The Lions defense kind of has been playing some better ball lately.
Yeah.
They just fired their defensive backs coach. So like maybe they realized there was something change that needed to be made.
Yeah.
I don't know. But all I do know is that it was one of the ugliest games of the weekend. But good for Lions. Like shout out Lions.
Good for the Lions. And it should be mentioned that pass to the offensive lineman that got intercepted was intercepted by our guy Aiden Hutchinson.
Yep.
Rookie out of Michigan. He's been a big time player for the Lions so far. I really like him. I know there's some guys on TikTok, shout out Theo, that thinks, they just put out hot takes. And so he pulled one game where he like had 3 sacks, but like 2 of them were on like scrambles for like, those like ticky-tack sacks. And like, so this means he's not good. So anytime Aiden Hutchinson makes a play, it makes me feel pretty good. Love that. Let's talk about a little bit prettier game. I had the over in this one. This was the Dolphins-Bears game. The total ends up being 35-32. The Dolphins win it in Chicago. I love betting Dolphins overs. Dolphins over is my new best friend. Cancel the Lions.
Yeah.
I want Dolphins overs. These games are just college games, and especially against the Bears where they traded away half their defense. Justin Fields playing much better ball. He had 178 yards rushing and a touchdown. The Dolphins win at 35-32. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that game. Just was a wild game.
We've unlocked a different kind of side of the Bears offense now that
they're kind of fun.
Yeah, well, the fact that they're letting Fields run the ball 15 times, I'm not saying that they didn't want to do that before, but it definitely felt like they were like, you know what, we're going to try to make you as much of a pocket passer as we can. You're going to get to run the ball, but like it's maybe like 7-8 times a game, but like if the guy can run, let the guy run. And I think that there's probably going to be plenty of games that the Bears have where he gets like under 10 carries. But if you're getting yards on the ground, you need to kind of stick to it. I know it's a risk of getting your guy hurt, but like that didn't stop like, Michael Vick, didn't stop Lamar Jackson. Like when you have a guy that can run and do what you can do, like it definitely has added a different aspect to that Bears offense. And like the Bears offense hasn't looked that good all season long. So I would say that just keep it going. I know they didn't win that game, but you still need to keep that going. I was really impressed. I think you're right. Fields has probably found a little bit of his confidence.
Yeah.
Roll with what's working, I guess is my point, like.
Definitely, like, let your guys use what they're good at. And Justin Fields can run the ball. And when you can run the ball, the defense has to respect it. Changes everything. You can't make him into a pocket passer. It's just not what he's going to be. If you drafted him to be a pocket passer, then that's on you. Let's talk about some other games, though. We had Falcons-Chargers. I only want to touch on this briefly because it was a good game. Chargers win it 20-17 over the Falcons. A tough loss for the Falcons, but a great win for the Chargers. They look up and they're only a game out in their division. Obviously, they've got to chase down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who we'll talk about in just a little bit. Patriots beat the Colts 26-3, and that leads to the firing of the Colts coach. And now all of a sudden, a former Colts lineman, Mr. Saturday himself, is the head coach. I mean, kind of just a wild storyline as much as anything. Do you have any thoughts on that or that game, I guess?
Yeah, I had Colts plus 5.5. Felt
right.
I felt really good about it entering the game. And then by halftime, when it was 13-0, I was like, this offense isn't going to score any points. Yeah. And they put up 3. So like they proved me wrong, but like they looked so bad. I thought Ellinger would kind of get it going this week. Yeah, they just like Reich deserves to be gone. Not to say Reich's a bad coach, but the team hasn't played good all year.
You need a new voice sometimes. That feels like this exact Colts situation. There's some good players there. They've been unfortunate with injuries, obviously, but that's what happens in the NFL, and they have not responded. So they kind of had to make a move. I'm just really more interested to see how it plays out. I guess as much as anything.
With Saturday, like what's gonna go on?
He's never coached before.
That's the thing. So he
That
seems like a
is-
very knowledgeable guy.
Oh
I'll say
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know what I mean?
Right. He played in the
'Cause-
NFL forever, but being a head coach is a lot different than just being a locker room guy.
True.
I hope the best for him though. Like, shout out to WBR running the Barstool Indy account. Like, it'd be fun to see him be able to come up with some cool content for that.
Yep.
Who knows? Let's talk about Bills at Jets. We're kind of a noted Bills pod, but dude, the Jets right now, 6-3, they look up, man. And in that AFC East, they're right there. That they're technically a half game back because they have one more loss than the Bills do. But dude, the Dolphins are right there too. The Patriots are only a game behind that. Like, honestly, the AFC North or East, excuse me, could be very interesting. Do you have any thoughts on Bills Jets?
What my thought is when you can make Josh Allen, play like that, clearly your defense is doing something right. He had no touchdowns passing, had 2 interceptions, only 205 yards passing. He didn't have a very good game. And I know he was like, well, I played like shit. I was like, yeah, like you didn't play good, but you have to give some credit to the Jets defense, which has actually been pretty good this year. That whole Jets team has had a lot of talent. We've said that they have a lot of really good players on that team. And it's almost unfortunate just that they're, not going to have Breece Hall for the rest of the year because that team was already really good. And like we said, they got 6 wins, but down the stretch, I'm sure they would love to have Breece Hall, obviously, too. So it's a bummer, but it doesn't mean that, like, the Jets are screwed. I think the Jets could be a playoff team. Like, I got a very, very high opinion on them right now. So it's not necessarily a bad loss for the Bills, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's at Jets. I mean, that's not a guaranteed thing anyways, but should be noted the Bills, their only 2 losses are on the road. So we'll look to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
Bills will be just fine. Now, it should be noted Josh Allen's elbow, I think he's calling it elbow soreness right now. Makes me nervous.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bills have a decent backup situation, and that team's just so loaded anyway. It doesn't – if he needs to sit out a week or two, it's fine. Obviously, if he has to sit out for a long time, it's not great. But let's talk about Vikings. We got to respect the Vikings. We've got lots of Vikings fans that listen to the pod. They beat the Commanders 20-17. I had Commanders money line. I was feeling pretty good about it. Spoke maybe a little too soon in the group chat. End up taking an L, but heck of a game. Vikings, great win on the road, 20-17. What do you think about Kirk Cousins? You got any thoughts?
Hey, he's doing his thing, man. We said, kind of in these noon games, that's his favorite thing to do. And
I think they call him the noon nightmare.
Yeah,
right
the
now.
noon nightmare. That's what it is. I was waiting for it. I was going to say, I don't have it quote unquote, but you know what? They looked good. Once again, the Vikings just keep it's that classic statement that we keep saying of like, you just keep beating the teams in front of you. And that's what the Vikings do. It's not always pretty. Like they've had a very close win over the Bears, a very close win over the Lions,
and the Commanders here. I mean, they're not a great team.
All 3 of those wins are against teams that like we're really not that high on, but still wins are wins at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if you won by 3, it doesn't matter if you won by 10. We can say, well, the eye test and everything, but they still held Washington to 17 points. So if we want to talk about eye test, like defense has been there. I got to give them credit because I've been kind of low on them this year, and I've probably said some of those things. Well, they barely beat the Lions. They barely beat the Bears. Those things are true, but they're still winning. So
gotta win in the NFL. It's a winning league. People say that. And we do have to give a shout out to the Vikings and the Vikings fans. Good win for them. Can't hold 7-1 against them. The eye test has been rough for them, but the wins say otherwise. So keep going. Let's talk about Jags at Raiders briefly. Jaguars beat the Raiders 27-20, and this is after the Jaguars. I think they were down 17-0 in this one. This was the 3rd time this season the Raiders have lost. When having a 17 or more point lead, McDaniel's got to be gone. No doubt about it. I don't think he is as of recording this now.
No.
Yeah, so I don't know. Not much to say about that game. A little bit ugly, but shout out to the Jags. Shout out to Pumbaa. Good win there. B-Russ deserves better. This is a B-Russ deserves better pod. There you go. Seahawks beat the Cardinals 31-21. First place Seahawks, man. NFC West I mean, don't look now, man. Our guy Gino's playing some good football. I want to say you were on Seahawks here, right? Or am I wrong?
No, I wish,
Okay.
man, because I've been on Seahawks quite a bit this year.
Yeah,
Like, this would have been a great spot to have them. I was like, wow, maybe this is the week that they lose, but nope, they kept it going. Kenneth Walker looks awesome. They're giving him the ball like 25, 30 times a game right now.
26 times this time.
Like, it's ridiculous. Like, they're just like, hey, he's a good running back. We're just going to keep
ride
giving
him
it to
while
him.
he's fresh, baby.
But if it works, it works. So,
exactly.
And he's putting up numbers, so I got to give it to him.
Shout out to Michigan State. Let's talk about a disgusting game, but a push that we were very happy about on Sunday. Bucks do end up beating the Rams 16-13. I know the Rams, I guess, locker room's kind of imploding a bit. I did want to mention that Jalen Ramsey said basically that he was tired of having to get stops. They keep getting stops, but the offense isn't helping them, blah, blah, blah. I mean, which is true, and everyone knows it, but you don't have to actually say it. And that's where kind of my critique on Jalen Ramsey starts. He's a good player on the field, but off the field, he's one of the dumber players in the league. We did push Bucks -3. That's one that I tailed you on. I know I tweeted that out. Happy to get the push there. Do you have any thoughts on that game? A little bit ugly, very defensive battle.
Yeah, it was unfortunate we couldn't get a winner on that one just because I felt like, I mean, people can argue it, whatever, but I felt like just the Bucks looked like the better team to me for most of that game. They just weren't putting up the points. Like, they had more yards. Yeah. Tom Brady wasn't outstanding, but like he still was able to do enough. And obviously, you know, there were 2 drives at the end of that game that, you know, Scotty Miller dropped a touchdown, so they didn't get it that time. And then they had to get another drive, and then they got it the second time around. So like they were leading touchdown drives at the end. They just, you know what, their rushing game wasn't that really good on Sunday. Yep. And maybe that's the real issue is like Tom Brady needs to have like at least some rushing game to help him out at this age. But he is a play action quarterback right now. If the play action's not working, then it's going to be a long day. And I know like some receivers and stuff got banged up for the Bucks, but no more excuses. Let's talk about the Sunday night game. It was actually kind of good. The Chiefs beat the first place Titans 20-17 in overtime. I had Chiefs -7 under whatever it was, 53 or whatever in a teaser. Yep. I should have been on the Titans. I've been on the underdog under teasers. That's the move. And Titans under would have been like Titans +19 under 50, whatever. It would have been the easiest bet ever. Shout out to the Titans though, man. They kind of have a game plan against the Chiefs. If these teams meet in the playoffs, Beast, we need to make a reminder right now. Got to remember, man, we got to take the Titans because they just have that game plan where it's like, we're going to have Derrick Henry beat the crap out of you. He only rushed it 17 times for 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. It wasn't like they just had to like force feed him. They have enough of a passing game, even with a backup quarterback in there. They had many chances to win this one straight up. The Titans defense played great as well. We got to give a shout out to them. What were your thoughts on Sunday Night Football? Yeah, I had the under in that one, and we've talked so much about
play.
Yeah, well, we talked so much about like primetime unders and how well they've been doing this year, and I think it's going to win on Monday Night Football too. I don't want to jinx it if anybody's on it, but I probably should have played it again on Monday Night Football just because I want to say after Sunday Night Football they were 16-10-1 on the year, which is pretty darn good. And that game at no point felt like it was good. I guess maybe early, on, like we had the 14-point second quarter. So like some people might have thought it was kind of over, but defenses looked great in that game. So I guess we'll see like what we can get out of the Chiefs going forward. But if they keep, playing games like this where, a running back like Derrick Henry just beats up on you, that can kind of wear on you. And like the deeper you get into the season, but I'm not too concerned about Mahomes. Like I know it was kind of an ugly win, but win's a win once again. So that was a good game as far as to have the under. So I feel like the biggest thing I took out of that was those defenses are actually a little bit better than I thought.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely kind of playoff type of a game, right? Playoff feel.
Malik Willis kind of sucks if I'm being honest.
He's not good. I could have told you that though. As a guy who bet on Liberty a lot last year, so I ended up watching him a lot, especially his senior year. When things were breaking down and things were tight, you know how it is in the NFL. Nothing hardly ever is just wide open in the NFL. When things were covered, he had a really hard time. Now, he flourished when guys were wide open and, guys were playing man-to-man, so he could just run it 40 yards up the middle. he was awesome. But as soon as it was a little adversity, you could see some. I'm not saying he can't develop, right? Because he's still young, got some years left. But yeah, I'm a little worried for them. I don't know. Do you know when Tannehill comes back? Or I mean, I know he was in street clothes this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure. You'd have to think like the second they can get him back, maybe they try to
They're
throw him
gonna have
in,
to.
just because
They're not in a position right now where they can just we'll just sit back on Malik Willis.
Yeah, I don't think
he's
you
not
can.
playing good enough to do that.
I don't think you can at all. I think you have to kind of just say, hey, you need to develop because
Yeah.
you're not ready. Like you need to sit behind Tannehill and learn, unfortunately. But
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. A lot of game left still. This was the halfway point in the NFL season. It should be noted. We're watching Monday Night Football right now. It's in the third quarter. Ravens are up 17-3 on the Saints. Still anybody's game. I'm on the underdog under teaser. So we need Saints plus 7.5 under 52.5. Under's looking okay. Saints, we need some help. So we'll see. We'll see. But let's get into one big take. We forgot this last week. I was able to get mine off, and then I forgot to make the segment for it later in the show. It happens. But what's your one big takeaway from this weekend? Because I'm excited about mine.
Yeah, I already gave away a little bit of it, but I
Okay.
didn't necessarily give away too much. So my big take's going to be the Jets are actually good. So for all the Jets fans out there, Jets, you know what I mean? Yeah, Jets. Yeah. But yeah. No, I really do. I think the Jets are good. They're a solid 6-3 team. Like there's probably 6-3 teams out there that I'm not believing in so much. No, I believe in the Jets. I really do think they can make the playoffs this year. Whether that means winning the division or whether that means sliding in on a wild card, I really do think they can do that. They've won 5 out of their last 6 games, and in those games, they've looked good. And we kind of said entering last week, they don't play as well on the road. Well, then they went on the road and they played well. So I believe it was that we had said they didn't play well on the road, or maybe I was saying that they didn't play well at home. That's what I should say. Misspoke there. We said that they didn't play well at home because they did have a couple losses at home to the Bengals. They lost at home to Baltimore. So they had a couple tough home losses to enter or to start the season, but they proved us wrong. Nice home win over the Buffalo Bills this past week. And that was just start to finish. I felt like defense just really showed up. I'm not saying Zach Wilson's going to be your guy that leads you to a Super Bowl, but this is a playoff team, if you ask me. I think they're actually good. This was a team that, what were they, third or fourth worst team in the league last year, had a ton of draft picks, did well drafting, got the right guys in place, and they're finally making it happen. So we'll see what they can do. A lot of people really excited about Saleh over there. So we'll see what they can do, man.
He may be the right coach for the situation that they're in, where it's he's kind of got to get those guys to believe you're not just an underdog anymore. You're the real deal. You guys can go out and win. They're a really young team. The defense is great.
Yeah.
I like that take. I'm going to go with a similar take where we're just kind of talking about one team, but mine's a little bit easier than yours. And maybe it's a less of a hot take. We're talking about the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs right now. Nobody's going to beat them. They're going to play either Bama or LSU in the championship game. And they're just a better team than either one of those two. And there's nobody that really can match up. Listen, when you recruit number 1 or number 2 every year for 4 years in a row, the way Georgia has, top 5 every single year, you're just going to eventually stack up talent. Now, they did lose pieces off that national championship team from last year, but Stetson Bennett is almost the perfect quarterback for them, where he's just got chip on his shoulder type guy. He's just there. He's sparky. He's fiery. And this comes from partly, I just don't think that Ohio State's not as good as I thought they were going to be. Bama's obviously not as good as I thought they were going to be. I thought this might be the best Bama team ever. That's a different story for a different day. I blame Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator, but it is what it is. I just think the Bulldogs are going to win this whole thing. I think the odds on them winning right now, if you're going to bet this, is not great. So I'm not saying go out and do that. But here's their schedule. They got Mississippi State at Mississippi. So, it's a road game. It's a night game. Kind of a trappy spot just because you're coming off of a very emotional win over Tennessee. But then you're at Kentucky, very, disappointing team. Then you've got Georgia Tech at home to close out the season. Georgia Tech's, that's a scrimmage. Georgia Tech. They're just so bad. So that's your 3 games. Then you're going to match up with either LSU or Bama. Georgia's confident against both of them. I don't see how Georgia doesn't win it. They've got the best team. It sucks, kind of, if you're looking at it from like a neutral standpoint, because it's like not fun, but it is what it is. Georgia's not fun. They're just that good. They're an NFL team. They're not fun to watch because they're an NFL team. It's that corporate brand of football. You kind of know what plays coming. There's not trickiness to the offense. The defense is just some freaking dogs that fly around. Offense is good enough. It's just a classic NFL type team. They're going to win it all this year. That's my one big take.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk. We've got 6 midweek MACtion games this week. Let's get into them. And I guess we can briefly touch on the Thursday college games as well, because you won't get to hear us talk about those before the next pod comes out Friday morning. We got Eastern Michigan at Akron, Ohio at Miami, Ball State at Toledo on Tuesday. Do you have any thoughts on any of those games? Any bets on any of those games?
I have the Buffalo and Central Michigan game, which is going to be on Wednesday.
Okay. So let's move to Wednesday then.
Yeah. Well, nothing on the Tuesday game. So that I guess that's what I'm saying here.
Yeah. So let's talk about Wednesday, because I have a pick on that Wednesday as well. So go ahead with your pick. You said Northern Illinois, Western Michigan.
No. I have Buffalo and Central Michigan. So we have 2 different Michigan teams here, but
you're right.
They're actually rivals. So like, what
are you thinking? What are you thinking for Buffalo?
I'm gonna take Buffalo -1 on the road here against Central Michigan. Not too much really going into this one. It's just simply that Buffalo is coming off a loss. Buffalo is playing really good ball entering this game. I kind of personally think Central stinks. Typically Central, their whole motto and like their whole school runs off of the idea of fire up chips. Well, we're going to kind of put out the fire. That's really what's going on here. Buffalo's going to roll into town. I don't think Central Michigan fares well in this game. Maybe I'm a sucker for thinking that, Central Michigan doesn't play well at home here, but Buffalo's been a better team all year. I'm going to take the better team, and I'm going to take the fact that they came off a tough loss, and maybe people are low on them, but I'm high on them. They're going to get right here. They're still trying to win the MAC right now.
Yeah.
It's a must-have game. I think they show up. I think they actually could win this game by a full touchdown, frankly.
Okay, so the game I'm on for Wednesday is that Western Michigan at home against Northern Illinois game. I'm taking the home team, Western Michigan here. Northern Illinois is an absolute joke. They're losing to everybody right now. They're 2-7 on the season. Now, Western Michigan's not a lot better, but they are at home, and I think that's a big deal when this midweek MACtion games roll around. Tend to get some students out there, get a little vibe going. Western has a better coaching staff, in my opinion. Northern's just been disappointing all kind of year. Obviously, Western's not much better. The biggest thing for me in this game is if you look at the numbers. So Northern Illinois has 71% of the bets. Western Michigan has 29%. But 64% of the money is on Western Michigan Broncos right here. That's enough to tell me some smart people like Western Michigan. Again, not a big handle, but somebody threw a 10K bet out there on Western Michigan. So, bam, that should light off kind of a red flag in your head. We'd like to bet on those percentages. The last game on that Wednesday is Kent State at Bowling Green. Bit of a stinker. Kent State used to be this really fun over team, and now they're like an under team. So, I don't even want to touch it. Let's talk Thursday night quickly before we wrap up the show. We got Tulsa at Memphis. Kind of a fun game, little American Conference game. We've also got Georgia Southern at Louisiana going down that night, both at 6:30. And then we've got the Thursday night NFL game, which is Atlanta at Carolina. NFC South matchup, bit of an ugly matchup, but it's our prime video game of the week on Thursday night. Do you have any thoughts on any of those games?
I'm not going to end up probably having anything on the college games, but you never know. I might end up putting something out on that NFL game. Maybe we go prime time under. You know what I mean?
It's been hot.
It's been hot, but at the same time, I feel like I've been kind of on the Falcons for most of this year.
This
might be a good spot to get them just because, Carolina, they're just, in my opinion, they're not that good.
They're starting PJ Walker again. I don't know if you saw that news. They're not going to Baker. Baker Mayfield ends up scoring 3 touchdowns for them. Well, he scored 2, and then I think a running back scored the 3rd. But when he came in, they scored 21 points.
They don't want to believe in Baker, and I get it.
I don't blame them.
I get it, but I'm not so sure PJ Walker's better. Maybe he is.
I don't
you know,
know.
it's hard to see
At this
because,
point, it's hard to say,
you know,
which
the
is why we might be
Panthers-
on the Falcons.
Yeah, well,
You
and the
know?
Panthers, they beat the Bucks a couple weeks ago, right? So like, I don't really know.
Yeah, dude.
But I think that would actually be a good spot potentially for an under. So stay tuned. If I had to lean anyway, maybe that's where I'll go.
Divisional unders too, man. You got it kind of a double dip there. All right. Well, unless you have anything else, I guess we'll wrap up the show here. It's been an awesome show. Again, we'll be back Friday morning. Be sure to subscribe, like, help us out on Twitter at Potato Gobbler, at Coda Capper Beast. For a lot of these midweek MACtion games, like we're probably going to have a play. That's the best way to find it, is just stay tuned on Twitter. We love to interact with you guys. So we're not just those like Twitter accounts that just go out there and like post our plays and like kind of flex on our haters. You know, we just like to interact and have a good time on Twitter. I think anyone who follows us knows that, but we appreciate you guys listening to the pod. We will be back Friday morning. Peace.
Yes, sir.